The jungle slept beneath a heavy quilt of mist, its breath steaming from the forest floor in long, silent tendrils. Cicadas buzzed in a constant rhythm, indifferent to the chaos brewing beyond the canopy. Birds called. Something distant howled. But nothing within the forest yet knew that the sky had changed. Above Earth, the Abrexian Empire's carrier ships hung like metal spores in low orbit, beautiful, symmetrical, and utterly alien. Their commanders stared down at the blue-green planet with disdain, calculating resource extraction models and planetary compliance ratios. Earth's biosphere, particularly the vast equatorial jungles, was marked non-essential, primitive, dangerous only to lesser species. A footnote in a conquest schedule. High Lord Vashtor clicked his mandibular plates with irritation as another report came in. Atmospheric interference was corrupting short-range comms. Earth's weather patterns were erratic, the humidity unsustainable, and the planet's surface crawling with organic irritants. These primitives still rely on combustion engines and projectile weapons, Vashtor said, speaking Galactic high tone. They hide behind terrain like frightened larvae. The others in the command chamber laughed, grating, synthesized sounds emitted through translator arrays. It was decided then, the Abrexians would land in the Amazon basin. No major population centers, no resistance expected. A perfect proving ground for new infantry mechs and atmospheric drones. They came in fire and thunder. Clouds split. Vessels dropped with geometric precision, spearing into the jungle like silver darts. Trees cracked under the weight of their deployment modules. Alien structures unfurled, habitats, silos, sensor spikes, rising like tumors in the greenery. Within hours, a foreign geometry had scarred 100 square kilometers of rainforest. And yet the jungle made no announcement of its pain. It swallowed the scars quietly. Thousands of kilometers away, deep inside a covert installation carved beneath the Sierra Nevada, the jungle special forces were activated. No press conferences, no political debates. Just a green light on a steel wall and the sudden churn of diesel generators. Sergeant Erez, 36, stood in front of a dull metal locker, wrapping jungle twine around the hilt of her machete. The ritual was old, older than her military service, and passed down from a grandfather who'd fought in the Colombian highlands. She tied each knot slowly, murmuring under her breath. To her right, Corporal Malik Tanaka checked the seals on his canteens. To her left, Lieutenant Imani Bello reviewed satellite photos projected onto a wall of tarp. "They're moving like they're still in space," Bello said. "Look at this formation, grid-based, clear lines. No deviation for terrain." Tanaka snorted. "They're marching into a jungle like it's a landing strip." Reyes sheathed the blade. "Arrogance gets you killed out there." Their team, codename Whisperer, had trained for years in environments exactly like the one now crawling with Abrexian tech. 12 operatives from 12 nations. Experts in asymmetric warfare, survival, tracking, camouflage. The mission parameters were grimly simple. Observe, assess, harass. Make the invaders bleed. There would be no reinforcements, no airstrikes, no backup. "Some suit on a different continent wants plausible deniability," Bello muttered. "If we die, we never existed." "We were never born," Reyes replied. "Only grown." They deployed that night. One by one, the team emerged from a stealth carrier 20 kilometers from the alien incursion zone. They dropped in silence, parachutes dissolving mid-descent. No lights, no comms chatter, just the rhythmic sound of their gear, the exhale of their breath, and the ancient pulse of the jungle welcoming them home. Within 12 hours, Whisper was in position. Reyes lay prone beneath a thick tangle of ferns, her face streaked with mud and sap. Through her binoculars, the alien base shimmered with artificial lighting. Abrexians moved in disciplined formations, bipedal, with iridescent armor and four-fingered hands. Drones hovered in lazy loops above them, occasionally sputtering as humidity corroded their rotors. Tanaka's voice crackled softly in her earpiece. "I count 3 drone nests. Perimeter lightly patrolled. No heat cams. They're using motion sensors. They think heat's unreliable, Reyes said. They've never met us. To the untrained eye, the jungle surrounding the base appeared empty. But Reyes knew better. Her team was already weaving into the terrain like blood into cloth, setting up kill zones, mapping out weak points, learning the rhythm of the invaders. Whisper had time. Time, patience, and the blessing of terrain. 2 Abrexian scouts passed beneath her vantage point. They trudged through ankle-deep mud, swatting at insects with bored gestures. Their armor gleamed, but one's helmet had green mold streaking the back. They didn't notice the faint shimmer in the treetop above them. Didn't hear the breathless human crouched just behind trunk. Didn't suspect that the log beside them had eyes. Reyes watched. Not yet. The mission was to observe. Still, she couldn't stop her hand from tightening around her machete. By nightfall, a full profile of the base had been assembled. Alien routines were clockwork. Their tech impressive but not infallible. Their patrols avoided dense brush. Their sensors failed in heavy rain. Their drones were blind beneath the canopy. Back at a hidden camp nestled in a hollowed-out root system, Reyes and Bello reviewed the findings under a layer of camo netting. They rely on tech like a crutch, Bello said. Take that away, they're blind. They've never hunted anything that thinks back, Reyes replied. She marked a crude map in charcoal. This path. We'll lead them here first. Let the jungle whisper in their ear. Bello smiled. Welcome to Earth. Reyes glanced at the photo pinned to the inside of her pack. A black and white image of her grandfather in a faded army uniform, standing in front of thick jungle with the same blade in hand. We've done this before, she whispered. The next morning, the jungle woke with a different rhythm. Birds still sang, but the space between their calls seemed tighter. The trees watched. Somewhere in the undergrowth, a tripwire waited. Somewhere higher up, a blade was poised to fall. And yet, the alien base moved as it always had, unaware, unworried. For now, Reyes crouched beneath the roots of a massive fig tree, eyes scanning the clearing ahead. Her voice, when it came through the comms, was calm. Operation Groundhog begins at 0400. No mistakes. No mercy. Let's remind them what this planet is. She pulled down her face netting, her eyes narrowing. We don't just survive the wild. We are the wild. Above them, the night thickened. Rain began to fall, soft and steady, muffling the sound of boots and breath. In the distance, an alien beacon blinked, a cold, clinical eye watching a world it thought it understood. And in the jungle below, 12 ghosts vanished into the dark. The first kill was not loud. It began with a breath, measured, slow, and ended with a rustle of leaves barely louder than the wind. The Abrexian scout dropped silently into the ferns, his lifeless body already half covered in dew and soil. His partner turned too late, caught a flash of motion in his peripheral vision, raised his weapon just as a vine wrapped around his ankle, jerking him into a hidden pit. By the time the remaining patrol realized 2 of their own were missing, it was already nightfall. Reyes watched from above, cloaked in foliage, body pressed into a knot of branches. Her heartbeat had not risen during the takedown. The kill had been clean. Necessary. She marked the coordinates on her slate and whispered into her mic. Package 2 neutralized. Movement pattern confirms quadrant rotation. Bello's voice came back, faint but clear. Copy. Package 3 on schedule. Setting ambush perimeter. In the alien base, the response was procedural. Drone feeds reviewed, patrol schedules adjusted. A footnote was logged. Biological hazards may have caused disappearance. Increased patrol frequency. Tanaka, crouched beside a moss-covered boulder, chuckled when Reyes relayed that line. Biological hazards. They mean us. The second ambush was louder. Whisper lured a patrol into an old irrigation ditch, now overgrown and full of mud. The lead Abrexian stepped on a carefully angled tripwire and released a cascade of sharpened bamboo. The next was caught in a snare, hoisted upside down into the trees. The final 2 were gunned down before they could trigger their distress beacons. Blood soaked into the jungle floor, red mingling with fluorescent violet. Still, no bodies were left behind. The jungle consumed them all. Each kill served a purpose, tactical and psychological. Reyes knew how to bleed an enemy without provoking full retaliation. Not yet. They weren't ready for a direct assault. This was about erosion, attrition, teaching the enemy to fear the very air they breathed. By the third night, Abrexian routines began to unravel. Patrols doubled. Lights remained on through dawn. Harsh barks of orders echoed between the trees. Entire drone squads were dispatched to sweep the canopy, only to crash into branches or be lured into signal loops that sent them spiraling into the undergrowth. But fear was slower to spread among the aliens than among humans. They still relied on pattern recognition and measurable threat assessments. They still assumed everything could be solved by data. Whisper was the virus in that logic. Reyes cleaned her blade beneath a thick-rooted ceiba tree, watching the phosphorescent glow of a fallen drone's remains. They hadn't needed to shoot it down. The jungle had done the work. Humidity shorted its sensors, sap glued its rotors. When it fell, Tanaka had simply slid its casing and removed the memory chip. "They're learning," Bello muttered beside her. "But not fast enough," Reyes said. "They're still thinking like generals. They should be thinking like prey." The night thickened with storm clouds. Rain fell in sheets, thick enough to mute radio waves. Reyes used the cover to move closer to the base. Alone, silent, and unseen. At the edge of the alien perimeter, she lay motionless for over an hour, waiting, breathing with the jungle. Her camouflage suit was already damp, layers of local moss stitched into its seams. When the guard finally turned his back, she shifted just enough to see inside the camp. Abrexians huddled around heat lamps and portable dehumidifiers. Some scraped mold from their armor. One had stripped entirely and was soaking in a chemical bath, his pale green skin covered in tiny, blistering growths. They were losing discipline. In the trees behind her, a howl echoed, low and guttural. Not human, not alien. Something native. The Abrexians twitched. Reyes smiled. Even the local fauna had begun to turn against them. By the next morning, the jungle smelled of ozone and fear. An alien officer was found dead with a vine wrapped tight around his throat. Likely an accident, the Empire would say, but someone had carved a single human word into his armor before he died. Run. Reyes didn't need to claim it. She hadn't done it. She didn't have to. The jungle had a way of listening, and her team's message was being carried farther than they could walk. Still, the toll was real. Private Kolo, the youngest member of Whisper, stepped on a mine while setting traps near a riverbed. It wasn't a Brexian. It was left from a decades-old conflict, one of Earth's many ghosts. Reyes reached him minutes too late. Blood soaked into the moss. He was conscious long enough to speak. "Don't waste time. You know what to do." Reyes didn't hesitate. She planted a claymore beside his shattered leg and stepped back. He nodded once. When the Abrexian patrol came through the same path 3 hours later, they triggered the device. 12 enemies died. One of them screamed until the jungle swallowed the sound. That night, Reyes sat alone near a fireless stove, carving Kolo's name into her blade's hilt with a piece of flint. Each mark told a story. She could recite all of them. Names from Borneo, Congo, Amazon, and now, this new war. She spoke none of them aloud. Tanaka approached, but didn't interrupt. He crouched beside her, listening to the rain. "I used to think we were ghosts," he said finally. "But this, what we're doing, it's different. We're becoming something else." Reyes didn't look up. They thought we'd hide. They thought tech made them gods. It just made them loud. The next strike was different. Not a trap. Not an ambush. A message. Whisper hit a supply convoy in open daylight. Fast, precise, and brutal. No attempt at concealment. They took nothing. Left no tracks. Only corpses and blood-stained trees arranged in a circle. At the center of the clearing, Reyes placed a salvaged Abrexian helmet filled with local fire ants. It pulsed with movement. She wanted them to see it, and they did. Surveillance drones caught the aftermath. The Empire's commander watched in silence as footage played. Armored bodies torn by bullets, sliced open by machetes. One soldier had evidently tried to remove his helmet mid-battle. Ants had already reached his eyes. "Enough," Vashter said, his voice tinged now with something close to confusion. "This is no longer a controlled theater." He ordered an escalation. Reinforcements. Larger drones. Thermobaric charges. The jungle will be cleansed. But already his soldiers whispered stories around sterilization lamps. They spoke of shadows that moved without sound, of invisible humans who breathed through leaves and fought with the patience of stone, of a forest that hated them. In the darkness, Reyes cleaned her rifle. Her fingers were steady. Her eyes were hollowed by sleeplessness but alive with fire. She had lost soldiers before. She would lose more. But this time, she wasn't fighting for a regime or a contract. She was fighting for the one truth the Abrexians refused to understand. The jungle doesn't forgive, and it never forgets. Morning broke behind the jungle canopy in a haze of amber and steam. The light didn't reach far, just enough to outline the skeletal remains of an Abrexian comms drone half swallowed by a banyan tree. Moss already clung to its scorched plating. Ants marched through its circuitry. Nature wasted nothing. Sergeant Reyes knelt beside the wreckage, her gloved fingers prying a sliver of metallic alloy from its side. Burned circuitry, fragmented code, but the casing was intact enough for extraction. She slid the shard into a pouch on her vest and stood, her breath slow, measured. Behind her, Corporal Tanaka emerged from the undergrowth, carrying the remains of another drone in a sling made of vines. "That's 5 we brought down in 2 days," he said. "They're adapting, but not fast enough." Reyes nodded. "We keep pushing. Every hour we close buys us an hour." They moved quietly back toward the team's temporary observation nest, a woven platform suspended 15 feet above ground, invisible for below. Lieutenant Bello was already there, hunched over a jury-rigged terminal assembled from salvaged Abrexian tech and human parts. The screen glowed faintly beneath a tarp, displaying a shifting map of the enemy base. "We've cracked partial routines," she said as Reyes and Tanaka climbed up. This drone batch was using scrambled transmission loops, but there's a blind window, 23 minutes every cycle, long enough to breach their central grid. Reyes leaned over the display, eyes narrowing. "Where's their relay hub?" Bello tapped a quadrant. "Here, mid-base, low elevation, probably buried under armor plating. But if we breach it, we can intercept fleet-level traffic." Tanaka frowned. "You want us to walk into the nest?" "No," Reyes said. "We're going to crawl in, slowly, quietly, and we're going to rip the heart out before they know we're there." For the first time in days, a flicker of something moved in her eyes. Not relief, not pride, focus, the shape of strategy forming in real time. This wasn't just survival anymore. It was initiative. They'd bled the enemy long enough. Now, they needed to strike at the brain. Hours passed in preparation. The team moved like parts of a single organism, calibrating movement, laying distractions, syncing watches. There were no speeches, no final briefings. Every operative knew the stakes. This would be the first strike inside the alien base. By nightfall, the jungle had grown eerily quiet. They began the approach just after midnight, slipping beneath motion sensors, ducking through sewage runoffs, climbing inverted over root tunnels. Mud coated their suits. Their weapons were stripped of all unnecessary weight. They didn't speak, not even in whispers. The jungle did that for them. The outer perimeter was weaker than expected. Abrexian patrols were stretched thin, frayed from days of unseen enemies and unseen losses. Reyes noted every detail. The loose discipline, the slouched stances, the occasional weapons set down to rest tired limbs. Complacency. Fear disguised as procedure. They reached the relay hub in under 90 minutes. A squat, hexagonal bunker lined with alien script and shrouded in weak shimmer fields. No guards, no cameras that they could see. Bello moved first, deploying a pulse dampener to stall internal alerts. Tanaka followed, prying open a vent panel barely larger than a backpack. Reyes slid in last, her machete drawn and cradled in silence. Inside, the corridor smelled of chemical coolant and heat fatigue. Alien walls pulsed faintly with data light. They crawled through ducts and maintenance passages until they found the core. The room was spherical, humming softly. A single Abrexian engineer floated mid-air, connected by neural cords to a network of glowing crystals. His eyes were closed. A translator helmet pulsed gently above his brow, emitting muted glyphs into the air. Reyes signaled halt. They didn't want to kill him. Not yet. Bello connected her rig to the hub's interface, bypassing encryption protocols with stolen keys from the drone wreckage. For 3 tense minutes, the team waited as alien symbols flickered across the screen, scrolling faster than the human eye could follow. Then the symbols slowed. Translated. Fleet Directive. Earth Theater. Stage 2 deployment pending. Tactical refocus required. Psychological containment ineffective. Terrain hostility above projections. Requesting override from High Command. Bello's lips curled slightly. They're losing control. Tanaka raised his weapon toward the engineer. Do we wake him? No, Reyes said. We let him sleep, and we leave a gift. They uploaded a false signal. Fabricated troop movements, a decoy location far from the real Whisper Hide. A classic misdirection, embedded in the fleet's own transmission protocols. Once activated, the Empire would chase phantoms for days. As they slipped out, the Abrexian engineer stirred. His eyes blinked open, sluggish, confused. Reyes didn't flinch. She crouched beside him and held up a data chip between 2 fingers. Then she placed it gently in his palm. Tell them, she said in English, knowing he wouldn't understand the words, but maybe the tone. Tell them this jungle doesn't belong to them. He didn't stop her as she disappeared into the ductwork. By dawn, they were gone. Back at the observation nest, Reyes and Bello sifted through the intercepted fleet traffic, eyes growing wider with each packet. They were planning a full sweep, Bello muttered. Burn everything south of the equator. Flatten it. No more patrols. Just fire. Because they don't understand it, Reyes said. Tanaka returned carrying 2 alien rifles and a half-melted visor. They're already pulling back from their eastern quadrant. Must have bought the bait. They'll keep looking for an army, Bello said. They won't find one, Reyes answered. Just 12 shadows in a jungle that hates them. They rested in shifts, ate in silence, and watched the Abrexian base begin to reposition. Panic wasn't obvious, but Reyes knew the signs. Unscheduled troop movements. Frantic digging. The sudden appearance of flamethrower units in a biome that devoured fire faster than it spread. They were scared. Later that night, as storm clouds returned, Reyes crept alone to the body of an alien soldier left behind during a failed recon. He was young, barely more than a cadet. His armor was pristine, save for the moss growing beneath the collar. She sat beside him for a long time. Then, quietly, she opened a small pouch at her waist and removed a photo. It was worn, corners softened by sweat. Her grandfather again, standing in the jungle. She placed it beside the body. For the record, she whispered, "We warned you." Behind her, thunder rolled. The jungle was waking again. Lightning cracked open the sky as if the jungle itself were exhaling its fury. Rain slammed down in torrents, drowning the air, soaking leaf and flesh alike. The jungle was no longer a battlefield. It had become a crucible. Sergeant Reyes moved like a ghost through the underbrush, coated in a layer of earth and sweat, machete secured at her side, rifle held low. Every step was deliberate. Every breath was rationed. Behind her, Tanaka and Bello stalked the shadows, their movements synchronized by experience and necessity, not words. Above them, the Abrexian base shimmered in flickering pulses of red. Panic had stripped it of its order. Patterns were gone. The geometry that once defied nature now bent awkwardly beneath 100 small failures. Rot had crept into their machinery. Fungal growths burst from joints in their armor. Their power systems sputtered under constant environmental stress. But it wasn't just the jungle that had turned on them. It was fear. Fear of what they couldn't see. Fear of 12 human operators who had become folklore among the alien ranks. Fear of the forest they thought they could burn. They had tried fire. Entire stretches of rainforest smoldered to blackened husks. Reyes had seen it, had smelled it, mourned it, cursed it, and still, the jungle had grown back. In some places, it seemed faster, thicker, more hostile. as if the land itself had been insulted. Tonight would be the end of it. Whisper's final objective had been approved in silence. Destroy the central command node before the Abrexians could regroup and launch orbital strikes. Their fleet hadn't left orbit. Not yet, but Reyes knew they were getting desperate. Earth had embarrassed them, and the Empire did not tolerate embarrassment. She signaled to the others. Tanaka split left, dropping into a ravine and vanishing into the mist. Bello climbed upward, moving toward an overlook where she could jam communications and intercept the enemy's retreat paths. Reyes alone moved forward. The command node stood at the heart of the base, an obelisk of black alloy and blinking sigils, surrounded by defensive rings and heat towers. Its structure pulsed like a wound. Dozens of Abrexian guards swarmed the area, their once polished armor dulled and streaked with spores. Several wore makeshift breathing masks. A few moved with limps. Even their weapons looked tired. Reyes waited until the storm reached its peak. Lightning struck a nearby tree, splitting it down the center. Screams echoed. Half the guards flinched. In that moment of disarray, Reyes broke from cover and hurled a small charge into the eastern sentry post. It detonated with a flash of light, not heat, enough to blind, not kill. That came next. She moved through the chaos like a blade, cutting through confusion, not just bodies. A shot to the chest, a knife to the spine, another explosion to scatter them. Then the Abrexians began firing back, but it was clumsy, erratic. They aimed at shadows, at ghosts. Bello's voice crackled through comms. No defenses are down. Jammers active. You're green, Reyes. Moving, Reyes replied, her voice a knife's edge. She reached the node as its outer plating began to close, the obelisk reacting to the breach. Reyes slid between the plates before they sealed, landing hard inside the control chamber. It was quiet here, insulated from the storm. The walls hummed. Data flowed across the floor in glowing veins. A single Abrexian commander stood before the console, taller than the others, armored in ceremonial alloy. His mandibles clicked in a rhythm that suggested a chant or a prayer. When he turned to face her, there was no fear in his expression, only disbelief. You are human, he said, the translator embedded in his chest, distorting the words into a breathy whisper. You are not meant to win. Reyes didn't answer. She raised her weapon. He lifted a hand, not in defense, but in fascination. You walk among poison and call a home. You wear rot and silence as armor. You are not civilization. You are. She fired once. He collapsed, his words cut short. She approached the console, inserted the device Bello had given her, and waited as it overrode the node systems. The display flickered. Codes broke apart. Transmission lines ruptured. Then silence. Outside, Tanaka's voice came through. Fleet's blind. Their network's down. They're pulling out. Reyes felt it in her chest before she saw it. The subtle shift in the air, like pressure leaving a room. The war, at least here, was over. She emerged from the node into a battlefield already dissolving. The remaining Abrexians were fleeing, abandoning posts, dropping equipment, retreating toward the remaining dropships. Fires burned, but they were isolated. Rain swallowed them quickly. Tanaka regrouped with her near the tree line. Mud up to his knees, a gash across his cheek. He didn't speak at first, just looked at her, eyes searching for confirmation. It's done, she said. They're leaving. He nodded slowly. About time. Where's Bello? Last I saw, she was watching from the ridge, smiling. They walked together through the battlefield, not as conquerors, but as survivors. There were no crowds, no cheers, just smoke and leaves and the crackling of dying machines. Reyes paused near the corpse of the Abrexian commander and retrieved something from his armor, a shard of crystalline data core. She didn't know what was on it and didn't care. A souvenir, a record. The rain began to fade. By morning, the dropships were gone. The sky was clear for the first time in weeks. Birds returned. Insects resumed their chorus. Even the trees seemed to breathe easier. Whisper held a quiet ceremony that afternoon. No grave, just names. Colo, Ramirez, Dima, others. Reyes read them aloud once, then burned the list. Each name carried into the canopy on smoke. Later, Bello approached her by the river, where she was cleaning her blade one last time. You think they'll come back? Bello asked. Reyes shrugged. Maybe. Not soon. Not here. They'll remember this. That's the point. Bello hesitated, then handed her a small device, an Abrexian recorder, altered with human code. It's broadcasting, she said. Not to them. To anyone else listening. Off-world, other species, traitors. Doesn't matter. Reyes looked down at it. You said we didn't want to be found. We don't, Bello said. But we do want to be understood. Reyes thumbed the device on. Her voice was steady, clear. To any species receiving this signal, Earth is not a colony. It is not a resource. It is not empty. She looked to the trilene, then back to the device. It is a home, and we will defend it, whether you see us or not. She tossed the device into the river, watching it drift away. As the sun fell behind the treetops, Whisper faded into the forest, vanishing one by one into the green. They left no trail, no monument, only stories.